morning, boys and girls. With permission of Scholastic Publishing, we're going to continue on Charlotte's Web. Today I'm going to finish Chapter 16, Off to the Fair, and Chapter 17, Uncle. Well, said Mr. Zuckerman, he's clean anyway. The buttermilk certainly helped. Mr. Arable studied Wilbur carefully. Yes, he's a wonderful pig, he said. It's hard to believe that he was the runt of the litter. You'll get some extra good ham and bacon, Homer, when it comes time to kill the pig. Wilbur heard these words and his heart almost stopped. I think I'm going to faint, he whispered to the old sheep who was watching. Kneel down, whispered the old sheep. Let the blood rush to your head. Wilbur sank to his knees, all the radiance gone. His eyes closed. Look, screamed Fern, he's fading away. Hey, watch me, yelled Avery, crawling on all fours in the crate. I'm a pig, I'm a pig. Avery's foot touched Templeton under the straw. What a mess, thought the rat. What a fantastic creatures boys are. Why did I get myself into this? The geese saw Avery in the crate and cheered. Avery, you get out of that crate this instant, commanded his mother. What do you think you are? I'm a pig, cried Avery, tossing hands of straw into the air. Oink, oink, oink. The truck is rolling away, Papa, said Fern. The truck, with no one at the wheel, had started to roll downhill. Mr. Arable dashed to the driver's seat and pulled on the emergency brake. The truck stopped. The geese cheered. Charlotte crouched and made herself as small as possible in the knothole, so Avery wouldn't see her. Come out at once, cried Mrs. Arable. Avery crawled out of the crate on his hands and knees, making faces at Wilbur. Wilbur fainted away. The pig is passed out, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Throw water on him. Throw buttermilk, Avery suggested. The geese cheered. Lurvy ran for a pail of water. Fern climbed into the pen and knelt by Wilbur's side. It's sunstroke, said Mr. Zuckerman. The heat is too much for him. Maybe he's dead, said Avery. Come out of that pig pen immediately, cried Mrs. Arable. Avery obeyed his mother and climbed into the back of the truck so he could see better. Lurvy returned with cold water and dashed it on Wilbur. Throw some on me, cried Avery. I'm hot too. Oh, keep quiet, hollered Fern. Keep quiet. Her eyes were brimming with tears. Wilbur, feeling the cold, came to. He rose slowly to his feet while the geese cheered. He's up, said Mr. Arable. I guess there's nothing wrong with him. I'm hungry, said Avery. I want a candied apple. Wilbur's all right now, said Fern. We can start. I want to take a ride on the Ferris wheel. Mr. Zuckerman and Mr. Arable and Lurvy grabbed the pig and pushed him head first toward the crate. Wilbur began to struggle. The harder the men pushed, the harder he held back. Avery jumped down and joined the men. Wilbur kicked and thrashed and grunted. Nothing wrong with this pig, said Mr. Zuckerman, cheerfully pressing his knee against Wilbur's behind. All together now, boys, shove. With a final heave, they jammed him into the crate. The geese cheered. Lurvy nailed the boards across the end so Wilbur couldn't get back out. Then, using all of their strength, the men picked up the crate and heaved it aboard the truck. They did not know that under the straw was a rat and inside the knothole was a big gray spider. They only saw a pig. Everybody in, called Mr. Arable. He started the motor. The ladies climbed in beside him. Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy and Fern and Avery rode in the back, hanging onto the sideboards. The truck began to move ahead. The geese cheered. The children answered their cheer, and away everybody went to the fair. And there is Lurvy pouring water onto the pig. Chapter 17, Uncle. When they pulled into the fairgrounds, they could hear music, see the Ferris wheel turning into the sky. They could smell the dust of the racetrack where the sprinkling cart had moistened it, and they could smell the hamburgers frying and see balloons aloft. They could hear the sheep blatting in their pens, and the enormous voice on the loudspeaker said, "Attention, please. Will the owner of a Pontiac car, license number H2439, please move your car away from the fireworks shed?" "Can I have some money?" asked Fern. Can I too?" asked Avery. "I'm going to win a baby doll, spinning a wheel, and it will stop at the right number," said Fern. "I'm going to steer a jet plane and make it bump into another one." "Can I have a balloon?" asked Fern. "Can I have frozen custard and cheeseburger and some raspberry soda pop?" asked Avery. "You children, be quiet until we get the pig unloaded," said Mrs. Arable. "Let the children go off by themselves," suggested Mr. Arable. "The fair only comes once a year." Mr. Arable gave Fern 2 quarters and 2 dimes. He gave Avery 5 dimes and 4 nickels. "Now run along," he said, "and remember the money has to last all day. Don't spend it on all in the first few minutes, and be back here at the truck at noontime so we can all have lunch together." Don't eat a lot of stuff that's going to make you sick to your stomachs. And if you go in those swings, said Mrs. Arable, hang on tight. You hang on very tight, hear me? And don't get lost, said Mrs. Zuckerman. And don't get dirty. Don't get overheated, said their mother. Watch out for pickpockets, cautioned their father. And don't cross the racetrack when the horses are coming, said Mrs. Zuckerman. The children grabbed each other by the hand and danced off in the direction of the merry-go-round, toward the wonderful music and the wonderful adventure and the wonderful excitement and the wonderful midway. There was no parents to guard them and guide them, and where they could be happy and free and do as they please. Mrs. Arable stood quietly. There's a picture of the children at the fair. And watched them go. Then sighed and she blew her nose. Do you really think it's all right? She asked. Well, they've got to grow up sometime, said Mr. Arable. And a fair is a good place to start, I guess. While Wilbur was being unloaded and taken out of his crate and into his new pig pen, crowds gathered to watch. They started to see the sign, Mr. Zuckerman's famous pig. Wilbur stared back and tried to look extra good. He was pleased with his new home. The pen was grassy and it was shaded from the sun by a shed roof. Charlotte, watching her chance, scrambled out of the crate and climbed up a post under the side of the roof. Nobody even noticed her. Templeton, not wishing to come out in broad daylight, stayed quietly under the straw at the bottom of the crate. Mr. Zuckerman poured some milk into Wilbur's trough, pitched clean straw into his pen, and then he and Mrs. Zuckerman and the Arables walked away toward the cattle barn to look at the purebred cows and to see the sights. Mr. Zuckerman particularly wanted to look at tractors. Mrs. Zuckerman wanted to see a deep freeze. Lurvy wandered off by himself, hoping to meet friends and have some fun on the midway. As soon as the people were gone, Charlotte spoke to Wilbur. It's a good thing you can't see what I see, she said. What do you see? Asked Wilbur. There is a pig in the next pen, and he's enormous. I'm afraid he's bigger than you are. Maybe he's older than I am, and he has more time to grow, said Wilbur. Tears began to come to his eyes. I'll drop down and have a closer look, Charlotte said. Then she crawled onto the beam till she was directly over his pen. She let herself down on a dragline and she hung in the air just in front of the pig's snout. May I have your name? She asked politely. The pig stared at her. No name, he said in a big, hearty voice. Just call me Uncle. Very well, Uncle, replied Charlotte. What is the date of your birth? Are you a spring pig? Sure, I'm a spring pig, replied Uncle. What do you think? I'm a spring chicken? Ha ha, that's a good one, eh, sister? Mildly funny, said Charlotte. I've heard funnier ones, though. Glad to have met you. Now I must be going. She ascended slowly and returned to Wilbur's pen. He claims he's a spring pig, reported Charlotte, and perhaps he is. One thing is certain, he has a most unattractive personality. He is too familiar, too noisy, and he cracks weak jokes. Also, he's not anywhere near as clean as you are, nor pleasant. I took quite a dislike to him in our brief interview. He's going to be a hard pig to beat, thought Wilbur, on account of his size and weight. But with me helping you, it can be done. When are you going to spin a web? Asked Wilbur. This afternoon late, if I'm not too tired, said Charlotte. There is a picture of Uncle. The least things tire me these days. I don't seem to have any energy, at least the energy I once had. My age, I guess. Wilbur looked at his friend. She looked rather swollen, and she seemed listless. I'm awfully sorry that you're feeling poorly, Charlotte. He said, perhaps if you spin a web and catch a couple flies, you'll feel better. Perhaps, she said wearily. But I feel like the end of a long day, clinging upside down to the ceiling. She settled down for a nap, leaving Wilbur very worried. All morning, people wandered past Wilbur's pen. Dozens and dozens of strangers stopped to stare at him, and to admire his silky white coat, his curly tail, his kind and radiant expression. Then they would move on to the next pen, where the bigger pig lay. Wilbur heard several people make favorable remarks about Uncle's great size. He couldn't help overhearing these remarks, and he couldn't help worrying. And now with Charlotte not feeling well, he thought, oh dear. All morning Templeton slept quietly under the straw. The day grew fiercely hot. At noon, the Zuckermans and Arables returned to the pig pen. Then a few minutes later, Fern and Avery showed up. Fern had a monkey doll in her arms and was eating a Cracker Jack. Avery had a balloon tied to his ear and was chewing a candied apple. The children were hot and dirty. Isn't it hot? Said Mrs. Zuckerman. It's terribly hot, said Mrs. Arable, fanning herself with an advertisement of a deep freeze. One by one, they climbed into the truck and opened lunch boxes. The sun beat down on everything. Nobody seemed hungry. When are the judges going to decide about Wilbur? Asked Mrs. Zuckerman. Not till tomorrow, said Mr. Zuckerman. Lurvy appeared carrying an Indian blanket that he had won. That's just what we need, said Avery, a blanket. Of course it is, replied Lurvy, as he spread the blanket across the sideboards of the truck so that it was a little tent. The children sat in the shade under the blanket and felt better. After lunch, they stretched out and fell asleep. Tomorrow we'll read The Cool of the Evening. Have a great day, everybody. Don't forget to check your agenda. Email me pictures of your work. If you have any questions, send me an email. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.